And there you have it. The Attorney General announcing that the Department of Justice is now suing the state of Georgia over those new voting restrictions that were passed in the wake of the election in November. We also heard a bit of a preview of what's likely going to be the Justice Department's case, citing specifically the changes to absentee voting, reducing access to early voting, the ban on food and drinks being passed out in voting lines. Back with me now, NBC News senior reporter Jane Tim, Insee Ufot, the CEO of the New Georgia Project and the New Georgia Project Action Fund, and Rachel Paulos, the former U.S. Attorney of Minnesota. So, Jane, I'll start with you. Your top line takeaways from what we just heard there.
You know, for me, I'm going to that Section 2. We're waiting on the Supreme Court to issue a ruling in the Brnovich case in Arizona that really could weaken what they're trying to do. It really could stop them from using Section 2 as the vote denial test by making it that you would have to show more of a discriminatory impact to voters to sort of make this claim, to say that it's discriminatory. So the Supreme Court could really change this case. And it's important how much they focus on Section 5 and the lack of preclearance, because Section 2 isn't really a provision that federal that voting rights advocates were using to try and stop discriminatory state laws until preclearance was tossed. So now they're using different parts of this law to try and make the case. It was also really interesting to me how much they focused on discriminatory intent. I think that's going to be really important to prove in this court, and it's a heavily followed for a legislative process. So I think they're going to have a lot of material to look in and how legislators talked about this, what the voting patterns were. We saw enormous turnout mobilized by ground games in Georgia, getting Black voters to trust absentee voting, when typically in Georgia we've seen a lot more voters of color voting early and less by mail. But the pandemic really changed everything, huge education campaigns, and we saw massive changes to how voters behave, and then massive changes to the legislation itself. Greg?
Yeah, it was interesting to hear the Attorney General insist that civil rights would in fact be violated if these laws were enacted. Also saying that had that particular part of the Voting Rights Act not been gutted, the laws in Georgia probably would not have been passed. Rachel, the Attorney General, he went on to say that specifically the laws there in Georgia violate Section 2. Does the DOJ's complaint hold water? How strong is their case?
The Section 2 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act is a very strong provision that was initially enacted to prevent southern states from the old Confederacy from using ridiculous tests to prevent African-American people from voting, literacy tests, guess how many gumballs are in this jar tests, other things that had actually nothing to do with voting rights. So what I heard the Attorney General saying today is, one, civil rights is very important to this administration, and voting is fundamental. They are drawing a direct line between the tremendous voter turnout in 2020 and these laws that were passed by Republican-controlled states to suppress voter turnout, in their opinion. So I think one of the most important things that we heard today was that this is just the first step. The public should expect a lawsuit, a federal lawsuit by the Department of Justice in every single state that has passed voter suppression or restrictive laws in the wake of the 2020 election.
Insee, the Attorney General accusing Georgia of passing the laws specifically designed to deny Black Georgians access to the ballot. Are you hopeful that this lawsuit stops that?
Yes, I am hopeful that the lawsuit stops that. I would expand that to include Latinos and Asian Americans as well, because we saw historic levels of participation from those groups in Georgia in 2020 as well. And so when we look at the fact that 85% of Asian American voters voted with vote by mail, absentee balloting, that this seems like, again, a solution that was narrowly tailored to suppress the votes of Georgia's growing multiracial, multi-ethnic progressive majority. I will also add that A.G. Garland's comments about if Section 5 were in place, that this wouldn't happen, landed squarely with me, particularly because today is the 8th anniversary of the Shelby versus Holder decision, like exactly on this day 8 years ago. And so, while discriminatory impact or intent is notoriously difficult to prove, the Georgia GOP has given us a lot to work with their bad behavior during this legislative session. And so I'm encouraged.
Jane Tim, Nseufa, Rachel Paulus, big thanks to all of you.